Hello, everyone. It's a sleepy Friday here in Vancouver. Welcome to my rant, where we talk about some of the ideas out there. We try to be a buoyant, kind of lively voice in the midst of a ton of misinformation. We focus primarily on energy mining, that transition, what that looks like, and we try to be a bit of a voice of reason to play in between a lot of the arguments on both sides. And someone once said, "Oh, you're a journalist, you do this." I'm absolutely not. I'm 100% pro mining, pro energy, these types of businesses for any country. That's if you want to have a sound economic base, you have energy. That's just you have abundance of energy. But I also take into account whether you want that abundance of energy coming from oil and gas, or you want it from batteries, or you want it from whatever it is that you want it from. I think there's a case to be made for this transition to having different sources, and not from, once again, it's taking away the ideological perspective that is, let's just say, hokey pokey and a lot of pseudoscience involved. To also, we need to have a lot of different tools in our tool belt if we want to get, to be a strong country and to have a strong energy program and to create wealth. Because truly, if you have energy, you create wealth, and if you create wealth, you have the opportunity. Doesn't necessarily mean it'll happen, but you have the opportunity to have a better, country running properly with education, with hospitals, with everything else. You set yourself up a lot better than if you don't have any of those things. So energy abundant countries do very well, and those that don't. And why should you care for my musings on it? Well, I've worked at Merrill Lynch. I've worked at RBC. I've done some interesting work in the markets for decades. It's where I kind of have most of my training, whether it's in options, derivatives, setting up offshore risk management, consultancy things. So I've always found it fascinating and looked at things from different angles as well. And once again, do I have a vested interest? 100%. I'm pro mining. I'm pro energy. So my bent is always going to be that way. But I do it with a twist because I'm very cognizant and I'm very, certain of my belief in being environmentally clean, and that there's a right way to do things and there's a wrong way of doing things. So parts of the ESG story I think are good. Like if you look at just as a brief look and you say, hey, that sounds fine. We should do things. Canada has done things on that basis for a very long time, almost too overboard. But we want to also kind of point out that for those that really do buy into, like, it's the end of the world, and if we don't address carbon and have these solutions, there'll be no more planet, there'll be this, there'll be that, and all these other things. If you are that person, then we need to point out that means an incredible amount of investment in mining. And that's when we run into the wall. We will run into the fact that for 8 years, we've had a Trudeau government that has not promoted that, has not only not promoted it, but education says how terrible it is. Mining's terrible. It's terrible for the environment, causes all this damage. It does all these terrible things. They've done a very, very good job at programming people to believe that that's the problem. And they have dug themselves into that, sorry to use a pun, into that problem themselves, because the only solution for them, whether it's going to be a nuclear solution, whether it is your solar panels, whether it is your batteries, whether it is geothermal, all of these things require mining. And it needs mining that's done properly. So we'll jump into our first article. That's kind of my big, when people ask what's my kind of take on things, that's it right there. So that's the perspective I'm coming from, where I want a clean environment. I know things can be done in a clean as possible way. We're dealing with mining. It's a very challenging sector, but we can certainly do it better if it's in our own backyard than if we just let someone else do it and then hope and cross our fingers and pray that it's being done properly, and that artisanal miners in North Africa or in South America, who are literally not sure how their next meal is coming, are going to be terribly concerned about dumping arsenic or dumping pollutants into the water. They don't care. And they shouldn't. They've got bigger problems than to be worried about the environment. They have significant, will my family make it in the next couple of days? So that's the extreme of the conversation. But I wanted to talk about this Western Standard article because it says, the province of Saskatchewan is setting aside $600 million for critical mineral incentives. And I'm not going to get into all the details of this, obviously, and I'm not going to get into all the comments. But the comments range from, "Oh, this is amazing," to, "Oh, this is Canada has socialism now," and or if the industry was so vital and so important, why would it need stimulating? And yeah, I would agree. I mean, I'm not for government being the investor at all. So there's and once again, my self-interest is wanting to promote this critical minerals incentive. You'd think that I'd be all for it. And I am. Part of me is because we are basically a socialist country for the most part. I know people don't like to hear that, but we're a liberal democracy. It's pretty extreme left. So we have to work with what we've got. Would I prefer if we had less taxes and we had a government that incentivized and encouraged its citizens to invest in mining? Even though it is high risk, but in small amounts, to say, hey, we're a resource country. If you would like to take part in this, the upside is monstrously high if we're successful. But there's a lot of no's. Like 8 out of 10, you're not going to hit. Nothing's going to happen. But if you handed that possibility over to people and encourage them to invest little bits, rather than say, we'll just tax you high, or we'll take the money and then we'll give it to the businesses we think that we should give them to. That would be the argument I would prefer. So I understand when people say, why do we need to give government money, which is taxpayer dollars, to these businesses if they're so vital and they're so needed? The flip side is potash. Saskatchewan is well known for potash. So Nutrien is there. That's your food, your fertilizer for food. We're a world player on that. Of course, the Athabasca Basin, uranium, we're a world player on that. But once again, my argument would be this is a good thing because the government has painted themselves into a corner, and because people have just gotten accustomed to the standard education line that comes from grade school all the way through university, whereas in this indoctrination program of these industries are bad and they're terrible, we should never do them, whole kind of messaging and narrative to, the only people that will be able to invest in this now are corporations and governments, because they're the smart ones. They're the experts. They know what they're doing. I take it as a win. If you can get government money to help grow some of these businesses, then that's a necessary evil for now. Of course, there's way better ways to do it. And will we get there? I don't know. But to give some before we get to, will we get there, which is interesting. Benchmark source, the Benchmark Resources, they are, or Benchmark Minerals, sorry, they are a great site and conference and discussion group, analysts that touch on a lot of these issues with mining and the energy transition and whatnot. And they've kind of highlighted that it's going to take 1.6 trillion just for battery industry by 2040. That's a big number. That's triple the 571 billion needed just to meet 2030 demand. So that's just the battery side. Like there's the nuclear side, there's the geothermal, there's all the other things that we can do. There's the solar farms, there's the wind farms, and all that. Those kind of come with the batteries often. But to meet that, that's a huge, astounding number. And that's a lot of minerals and metals. And how we're going to get those whenever you've convinced people that it's not great to do mining, it's not wonderful, is all you're going to do is what a lot of these politicians do, is they say, say, for example, for oil and gas, well, Canada can't do oil and gas. We're going to penalize them. We're going to try to stop banks from lending money to them. But you can sit on the board of a company or be a CEO of a company that's in a third world country that used to be owned by Exxon, but now is its own entity, and they can do oil and gas, though. And that leaves people scratch their heads going, well, wait a second. Are we doing this for the environment, or are we doing this as some sort of economic shift? This doesn't make any sense. This narrative isn't clear. And the narrative isn't clear. And that's an unfortunate thing, which, when people are trying to evaluate any of these material topics, they get frustrated because there isn't a clear answer to them. There just simply isn't. I know some people will find that hard to believe, but that action and words thing, that they don't match. They just don't. But once again, that's beyond this discussion. That's just kind of throwing that out there. Let's take a look at, and this is a great Pierre Poilievre take, or 1 minute take on the situation, and see what his perspective is. And let's take it away and just take a quick peek at this clip here. So great, Pierre Poilievre take there on the minerals industry. Whether or not he'd do it or not, who knows? I mean, I've got no opinion on that either way. But that's what I want to hear. That's the type of leadership I want to hear, is the acknowledgement we are a resource country. There's no shame in that. I liken it to Australia. Australians have a much better economy than Canadians right now, and they are leading us in even the green transition. If you're on that side of the argument. For the most part, they're very far ahead on the batteries, on everything else, because they've kind of let their people know that's what we are. And they are similar extreme leftist views over there as well. So there's no reason why we couldn't still be that type of government, those type of people, and recognizing that mining is the solution for these things, and that you want to have regulations, you want to have a say. We know now that you can't just turn a blind eye and let something happen in a far off country and that it doesn't affect the environment in some sort of fashion. So we need to be looking at projects that are going to be done, that we can oversee, that can be done properly. It's no different than whenever there are like nuclear reactors in other countries where they have teams go in to see, are they up to standards? What are they doing? Are they not enriching uranium for weapons? That type of stuff. Nuclear inspectors. That they do these types of things just to ensure that we're doing things on a right scale. Now, why this matters is that, and not to seem like I'm being favorites as well, because there is a liberal as well who I've talked about before. I want to say his name is Jean Champlain. It's not Jean Champlain, but there is another like minister of mines on the liberal side who also is very pro mining. I mean, he's very much so. So I don't want people to feel like I'm just promoting Pierre Poilievre as well, or that I'm trying to push a political agenda. But he's on the liberal. I would love to see someone like him as well, not only for my own self-interest with mining, but because he does recognize that if we're going to do this transition, it requires that we really get on board and really make the permitting easier, and we get mines going. Right now, it's about 17 years between a discovery and putting a mine in action. We haven't really put a lot of mines together, certainly in the U.S. as well. I think it's been 2 decades since they've had a new mine come on. Don't quote me on that. Or maybe there's just one. That needs the way to permit has to be shortened dramatically. A lot of money needs to be pumped into the R&D, or finding and proving up resources and getting them going, so that we can get batteries made, so we can get the nuclear reactors going with enough fuel. And meanwhile, that still means oil and gas. So those people who are for oil and gas, we're still going to need it. We're still going to use it. Even if you believe Goldman Sachs, who they say it's, I think 2033 will be peak oil. Maybe it will. I don't know. But it doesn't hurt, because we're not trying to shill for one sector over another. It doesn't hurt to have a basket of solutions, and to also not rely on the technologies that we've got. All these possible solutions, we're working towards them, and maybe then there's fusion. Who knows? Or maybe there's a new source of energy. But we can't just sit idly and wait and then hope that we're just going to get materials from China. And why that's important? Well, I think everyone knows that there's at least a trade war going on right now with China for some time, and a lot over the chips type of angle, which once again, that still means mining if it's chips, because if you look at China's now to restrict antimony exports over tensions over between the U.S. and the West, and say basically China and BRICS, let's just say, and they're enforcing companies in there, because I think they control about 48% of the production, almost all the production, but 48% of the mining of antimony, and these go into the chips as well. Once again, it's very specific niche kind of target market. There is a mining project in the U.S. that's being funded by the Department of Defense that's supposed to come on in 2028 to solve this issue of antimony. But once again, it's pretty late to the party. China holds all the cards as far as the battery side. They're building up nuclear reactors, batteries at huge rates, the vanadium batteries at huge rates. You name it, they're doing it. And also on top of that, why that matters is we see that the world's top producer, which is China, of steel, their industry is a little bit under crisis right now. So they're feeling this downturn. Copper is pulled back a little bit as they're seeing weakening demand. But all of this I wanted to bring up is that why is it that we've just accepted that, oh, well, China's the biggest producer of all these things, and China is building out all of these things, and no one seems to mind that that's the case. It should be that it's the West creating all of these things, and it's amazing to think that people just kind of just go, oh no, we just let it get done over there. No, we shouldn't. We should be doing which the Biden administration has really done to I wish to more of an extent, to focus on, let's place some money in and get going in these sectors and incentivize these sectors, and really promote them. So a long-winded, big, huge kind of discussion on, we're facing some challenges. China is the biggest developer, leap years ahead of us on any of these energy transition initiatives. I wish that a lot more of the money had been given to the foundation to build it stronger. They're going to find out sooner or later that they don't have access to the supply of that foundation, all those metals that create their chips. So even when you're building out the big fancy Tesla Gigafactory or the Volkswagen factory in Ontario that the government's giving $12 billion towards, they're going to end up going, well, do we have all the high-grade phosphoric acid we need for these batteries? Do we have the nickel? Do we have any of those things? And they're going to find that, no, they don't. They don't have nearly enough. And that has to be discussion and a serious discussion as to how we're going to get mines up and running to be feeding all of these industries and technologies. Never mind, we didn't even talk about AI and how much energy that's going to take just to meet the demands of today. So anyways, this was too long a rant, 20 minutes. Tried to bite off way too much right now, but hey, it's August. It's a sleepy day here. I wanted to kind of get out a lot of these big ideas, get some feedback from you guys and see what you think. And it really was levered off of that $600 million, that whole question of, should it come from government? Should it come from people? And I'll just throw this in because we talked about it, I think it was last week. 77% of the average Canadian's money is in their house. So they're not investing in anything. And not only that, you really can't right now. Inflation's so high, people are not interested in investing in anything because they can't. They need things to be sorted out economically here. And that's part of, because we've got a failure of a system that just doesn't work. And that's that. Once again, I'd love your thoughts on that. If you think, a far left economy is better than a far right or a middle of the road, whatever that is, we'd love to hear your thoughts and give us your take on it. And maybe even if you just think that, no, we can do the transition and we don't need to do any mining at all. Let me know what your thoughts are and why you think that way. We'd love to find out. And thanks once again for all of the messages that we're getting. And let's encourage this discussion. And eventually what we're going to do is we're going to take these discussions into like separate groups on Zoom. You can join in. You don't have to say who you are. It can be anonymous, and jump in and feed questions and ask away. And then we'll also host guests as well. So anyways, guys, happy Friday. Enough of me yammering on and ranting. I appreciate you being here, and we'll talk to you real soon.